David's just one of the friendliest and also fiercest members of Banjo that I've met. Really wonderful person, and will speak on our panel. His family also immigrated to the U.S. from Mexico back in 1921, and so the question of immigration and U.S. imperialism is deeply personal to him. Next we have Naya, who is originally from New York City, currently a student in Pittsburgh, came to our conference with Chanela, her mother. And Naya is the sister of Antonio Kasim Armstrong, who was murdered by NYPD in Harlem back in 2021. She has been protesting since that day, and Antonio was a best friend and a mentor for her, and she's been fighting fiercely for justice for her family. And we also have Hannah Jordy, who Hannah and I have a fun story to relay from the Dare to Struggle conference last June in LA, where we threw down against the LAPD and the National Guard as ICE was attacking LA. And lastly, unfortunately, we had a fourth panelist lined up, Kevin Colon, who his son Terrence was murdered by ICE back in 2015 in Detroit. Kevin, unfortunately, was not able to join us for this conference. His partner had a medical crisis and was not able to join. But he did share a note that he wanted us to read for the audience today. Terrence was killed in their home in front of his father and his sister. And when I was first learning about the story, you can go on YouTube, you can Google Terrence's name and learn about what happened. In every single news clipping, you see his father, Kevin, speaking about his son, keeping his memory alive, fighting the smearing and awful, vile attacks on my son's name. And so what Kevin wanted us to read out was, he said, "I would like for you to tell them how bad I wanted to be there for my son. I want it to be known I'll be fighting for my son and others' justice until the Lord takes breath out of me." My son, Terrence Kellum, died April 27, 2015. He never had the chance to see his only daughter, born on May 30, 2015, a month and 3 days after her father was murdered in my home in front of myself and his sister. This haunts my family till this day, especially to see ICE out here killing willingly every day. ICE agent Mitchell Quinn murdered my son. My son's anniversary is on Monday, April 27th, so just 2 days from now. And then lastly, salute and power to all my people. Together we can win and stand together in unity. Yes. So to give a little historical and political backdrop for this conversation, immigrants have always been subjected to police brutality and state terror as long as this country has existed. Since the 1800s, Mexicans and Chicano people have been criminalized and killed by every government agency that carries guns. Immigrants from every other continent coming to this country, fleeing violence and U.S. imperialism, have been subjugated and dehumanized on U.S. soil for hundreds of years. Right now, this reign of terror that we're seeing from ICE and the Department of Homeland Security is just a continuation of hundreds of years of this oppression of immigrants here in the U.S. This has been nonstop across presidential administrations. More recently, we could go way back, but I'll start with the Bush administration. They really ramped up the militarization of the border and made it even more deadly for people crossing, trying to come here to have a better life for their families. During the Obama years, the government initiated and led this public opinion campaign to separate immigrants into two camps. There's the good immigrants and the bad immigrants. The good, hard-working immigrants helped build America. They deserve to be here. They deserve good treatment. Then there's the bad immigrants, the ones who are criminals, the ones who deserve to be deported, the ones who deserve to face every form of state oppression that comes down on them. And so with that public opinion taking hold, that hatred, we saw Obama and his team deport millions of immigrants in those 8 years. This was the hope that Obama brought to this country. And it's just a crock of shit. Now under Trump in this second term, we're seeing a dangerous combination. This longer-running hatred of immigrants has been whipped up to an all-time high in this country. You even see second and third generation people who've been living here demonizing the people who got here just a few years after them, or just a generation after them. And with this hatred in combination, there's also a more sophisticated use of executive power that the Trump administration is wielding to more effectively cleanse immigrants from this country and really ramp up the violence and the targeting. But in LA in June 2025, we saw the most significant protest uprising since 2020. You had young people and the children of immigrants in LA leading the confrontations with LAPD, with the National Guard, against DHS, pulling up on their buildings, actually shutting them down, stopping the mass deportation machine for a few days. And that militancy was most pronounced in LA, but it also spilled over into a few other cities. Then in Minneapolis in January this year, we witnessed the murders of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. We saw the videos and saw how horrific and bloodthirsty it was for ICE agents to shoot them dead. These also kicked off huge protests in the Twin Cities. And so that brings us to the present. And to just give a few key points that we want to get into in our conversation, much like the 2020 rebellions, these mass protests against ICE have not decisively stopped the brutalization and targeting of immigrants. We're not seeing these protests go far enough to spark deeper crises of legitimacy for these government agencies and this overall system of mass deportation. Another reason for this panel is we see this mentality on social media and out in the world, this idea that this isn't our fight if you're not at immediate risk of deportation or getting targeted by ICE, which we obviously disagree with on a few levels. The most important being that we should care about every form of oppression and ending all of it. A more legitimate question, though, and more legitimate frustration after the murders of Renee Good and Alex Preddy was this criticism and this feeling that people had. People are only out protesting when it's white people getting killed by ICE. Or when it's activists and organizers getting killed on video. And that's a question worth considering when we compare that and the protests that followed the murders of Renee Good and Alex Preddy to the lack of protest when ICE agents murdered Keith Porter in LA and Silverio Villegas Gonzalez here in Chicago. Let alone the dozens of deaths of immigrants who are in detention centers facing inhumane conditions, much like the deaths in prisons where it's not on video, it's not something, it's like totally out of sight and out of mind, and there aren't mass protests the way there should be. So in this panel, we'll hear from people's experiences fighting ICE, fighting police brutality, what these two movements can learn from each other, and how all of us should be relating to the movement to fight and end ICE terror. All right, so starting with Elise, my question for you, just to bring us all up to speed about your experience of protesting ICE here in Chicago, and what you think people should know about it.
So before I even get into that question, they gave me a mic, so here we go. I want to say thank you to the families who came out. Y'all are some of the bravest motherfuckers I know. The fact that you have experienced police brutality head on and you continue to fight, and you have come here and you have shared stories with each other and you have relived these moments over and over and over. And what I would say I would pray for, but I don't believe in God, but I do believe in revolution. So what I will fight for is that you guys and the families have found families together here today.
Yes, yes.
And it has been a long and heavy day, and I really hope I have something to add to this conversation. But I just want to say thank you for being here, and I think there's amazing things to come, as everybody in this room deserves justice for their families. So, like we went over in the introduction, I have been arrested twice, both at a protest. The first protest was protesting a genocide and the city of Chicago decided to throw a party for the people who were responsible for that genocide. I thought that was fucked up. I thought that something should be done about that. I thought that I wasn't going to co-sign on the genocide or hosting a party for the Democrats who have let shit with ICE happen, were responsible for the genocide, have done nothing to stop police brutality. I'm not going to be a part of a party for that. And I'm going to go a little bit further into the connections between police brutality and ICE and how I see the fight, or how people are repressed in that. So I'll go into that more later, but I was also arrested in front of the Broadview ICE facility. So in Chicago, a little bit of context, there is not an ICE processing facility in the city limits of Chicago. However, there's one directly outside of it. And it has been the site of mass protests for a very long time. And especially during the height of Operation Midway Blitz here in Chicago, where we had Gregory Bavino and we had all of his masked goons coming in and making photo ops of these violent and outrageous arrests. And then people would get shipped to Broadview, and pretty quick, well, some of them more quickly than others disappeared. Some people would kind of languish in Broadview for a while before being shipped out of state. But horrendous conditions that lawmakers couldn't get in to see the conditions of the migrants, lawyers couldn't get in to see people, families didn't know where their loved ones had gone. And so it was a site of protest. And I was, more than anything, curious to see who else wanted to fight ICE. I wanted to see who was there. I knew that the protests weren't enough. I knew that it was not actually stopping or even slowing ICE activity, but I knew that there were people who were there who also felt that what was happening was fucking outrageous and that something should be done. And so my goal that day was to go talk to those people, to get the vibe on that. And I thought it was going to be a very chill Friday, a very chill protest, and it was for the most part. And that was until about 9 o'clock when the protest was wrapping up. And we started seeing some interesting change in how ICE was operating. That was also the first day that J.B. Pritzker, who is often lauded as this progressive Democrat, that was the first day he had deployed the Illinois State Police to protect ICE. So however much J.B. Pritzker wants to get on media and present himself as some sort of opposition to Trump, what J.B. Pritzker's actions, the governor of Illinois, have actually been is to protect ICE and to protect ICE operations. And I want to be very clear on that.
Shame.
Absolutely. Shame. And that was the first day that his Illinois State Police had been supposedly providing safety to protesters because before the Illinois State Police had showed up, they were shooting into the protesters with rubber bullets, with pepper balls. The pastor of this church was shot by ICE by one of those rubber bullets. And so supposedly J.B. Pritzker had the Illinois State Police there to protect the protesters. The actual function of those police was to allow every single ICE vehicle to leave and exit that facility without being stopped. That was their role. So we saw that firsthand, and we saw what that looked like on the first day, and we saw the hypocrisy. And about 9 o'clock, tensions and the vibe shifted. We saw that the way that the Illinois State Police were operating was very different. We started seeing this armored vehicle, like pull up in front of the facility. Some masked media people, not like NBC News, not like some sort of even what you would expect to be media, but it was ICE people wearing masks and taking videos of this armored vehicle. A few minutes later, that goes into the Broadview ICE facility. A few minutes later, we see the gates open, and we see ICE agents start to descend onto where we were. The protesters who were standing there were in what the Illinois State Police had declared to be a free speech zone. So I'm going to tell you what actually was happening there that day, and what we found out later is that that day was a photo shoot for Kristi Noem and Greg Vivino. And how they staged that was they invited the Instagrammer Benny Johnson to come in and take a bunch of videos of them. And on one of the videos that he took, Greg Vivino says, "This once was a free speech zone, and now this is a free arrest zone." And they treated it as such. And so they took their media people who were all masked up, wearing their yellow vests and their big old cameras, and they marched out with the help of the Illinois State Police. They marched out into the crowd, and they started doing performative arrests. So tackling people to the ground. Greg Vivino put his knee on somebody and put the handcuffs on somebody, and they made sure to record it. And what we see on the Instagram reel later is also Kristi Noem saying that this group of people are some radical terrorists. I wish those motherfuckers would have fought a little harder than they did. But I can tell you, in that crowd, it was mostly religious people. It was mostly people who, were wearing the silly costumes or had the silly signs. It wasn't anything that was going to get in the way of ICE running their operations. Okay, so some of my friends get tackled, I get tackled, and some of us get handcuffed and brought into the fence of the Broadview ICE facility. Who was selected was completely random, but they did end up with 6 men and 6 women, where they then recorded us and took videos of us, and made a big show of having gotten these radicals off the street. From there, we were taken into the ICE black site, the place where there were no lawyers. Again, no lawyers, no congressmen. Nobody was allowed to go in there, but all of a sudden, they're arresting a whole bunch of us and leading us in, detaining us in an immigration facility. And there, we're seeing the conditions of the people who are being brought in, right? And, it's like clearly people who were just coming off work. It's clearly people who are, maybe had a morning drinking with their buddies. It is not what DHS is saying that they're arresting. The conditions were awful. The conditions were awful. They held us there for about 8 hours, and I knew I was getting out. I think that's the difference between me and somebody else who was in that facility for a different reason. I knew I was getting out. But the whole scenario was outrageous, and it was, we were investigated by the FBI, so they were coming in and asking us questions and taking our picture, and it was a lot. It was a lot. So that was my experience, and then I got out. I have a lot more to say about that, but I can tell that I'm rambling. But the last thing that I definitely want to talk about is I'm also a teacher in CBS, in Chicago Public Schools, in Little Village. And I have a lot of students. Little Village, for those of us who are aware or don't know, was mainly settled by Mexican families who have a long history, and a lot of art and a lot of culture comes out of Little Village. And it also has a lot of new arrivals. Recent immigrants to the United States have settled there. And it became the heart for a lot of Operation Midway Blitz with ICE. And because of that, because my school is situated there, a lot of my students have had experiences with ICE. Just last week, Operation Midway Blitz has been over, but just last week, this one's hard. Yeah. Okay, so just last week, I had one of my 12-year-old students went with his family to an immigration hearing. His father was detained, and his eldest brother was detained in front of the family, and he was questioned until 5 o'clock. I don't know what the fuck a 12-year-old has to say to ICE. I don't know why the fuck a 12-year-old would be interrogated. And then he comes back to school the next day and has to continue on like nothing else has happened. There has been we've not been able to have recess outside a lot of days, and it'll be a nice day, and the kids are asking me why, and I have to explain it's because there's ice operations in the area. And then you have kids who are coming in or exiting on this like high alert because we don't know what that siren is, because we don't know if our kids are going to be fucked with. And so it's yeah, I have a lot of thoughts and feelings. I'm going to pass the mic, or I'm going to let you ask the next question. And I'm going to.
It's basically the same question for David of what your experience has been protesting ICE.
Hello, everybody. First off, I want to say how honored I am to be with each and every one of you in this struggle against police brutality and ICE terror, and I guess the general nature of state violence. On January 10th, Dare Struggle Austin called for an emergency protest 3 days following the murder of Renee Good in Minneapolis. We went downtown, shut down a couple streets, did our thing, burned our flags, and then the cops had shot the crowd with pepper balls. I myself was bruised all over and cut all over my body from them. One even hit my hat, but it hit the brim of my hat, so luckily it was protected. And then eventually they had charged the crowd and had arrested a few of us. One person was even tackled, walking away, tackled with a bicycle as they were walking away. I myself was tackled in the middle of the intersection. Cops had slammed my face on the ground and broke my glasses. And I was arrested and in jail for about 22 hours. And I was only in there for a short amount of time, but it was pretty horrifying and brutal with the conditions inside Travis County Jail. And I only had 1 day of experience inside the incarceration system. And many of the people that we know have been in the system, in prisons and jails for decades at a time. State violence is absolutely brutal and horrifying. So that has been my personal experience, but about a month later, Dare to Struggle Austin had been leading student walkouts. In Austin, we had about 800 students leave their schools across 5 campuses. And then we had some connections down in San Antonio where we had a school walkout as well in a more militant direction. That administration had administered the worst punishments out of all the schools that we've been working with. People were expelled for walking out of ICE. People were suspended for weeks on end and just slandered by their own school. The school just told them lies about them. Shame on them. And a little bit more serious repressive forces had attacked our Austin schools. About 5 students were visited by investigators under domestic terrorism accusations the day before the school. 2 or 3 people were visited at their homes even, and the rest of their schools. But it just goes to show how police and even state institutions such as schools oftentimes are on the side of ICE, especially the police. The police actively work with ICE. Every day I see state police in Austin, on social media, arrest and detain people after random traffic stops or targeted traffic stops. They read the license plates and then arrest people from there. But yeah, that's been my experience with police brutality.
And then, Naya, for you, back in your head. Both your experiences fighting for justice for Antonio, and then you guys have the story about what happened in LA last June.
In 2021, on October 6th, my brother was killed in his girlfriend's apartment by the NYPD. The day of, I believe, well, the day after, we came down from PA where we were living at the time, and we did a protest. We had Black Lives Matter from Virginia came down, and they organized the thing, and we had all his friends, and it was all, we were just all on the street, and we marched to the 32nd precinct. By the time we got close to the 32nd precinct, there was someone following us who hid outside of his girlfriend's apartment while we were having a visual, and they followed our protest, and once we got close to the 32nd precinct, the officer got in his car and tried to run us all over. But since it was being recorded, someone showed us, because since the officer was right behind me and my mom, they pushed us out the way and the officer stopped. A year after that, we did another protest at the 32nd precinct where I got separated from my mom because I went to go get another member. At the time, they wasn't letting them in. There was a barricade separating us, and they were hugging me. While they were hugging me, 8 officers snuck up behind me and kind of trapped me in between the barricade. And an officer ended up putting his gloves on and pulling his gun out on me, which caused everyone in the crowd to come and stop. Because at the time I was 14, I had just turned 14. And if it wasn't for people coming into that crowd, I probably would have been with my brother, honestly. But then, last year we went to Cali. We had another conference out there, and Hannah, my bodyguard. Basically, we kind of helped lead someone's event who got, I forgot what happened there. I just remember that they needed our help. So, in the midst of us taking it over, since it was already going on, I guess they were already agitating the police. So me and Hannah got in the middle kind of, and we were trying to get to the front with the rest of the members. And I just remember, everything was normal. We started walking. I just remember we just stopped. And I just remember the people screaming peaceful protest. And Hannah, Lola, and the rest of us we're just telling them screaming peaceful protest isn't going to stop them from doing what they're going to do. And they ended up tear gassing us. So we were running, and in the midst of us running, we went to the sidewalk, because we're not from LA, we're from New York, so we didn't know that we couldn't be on the sidewalk. So we did not know. So we were talking, we were trying to meet up with the rest of us, and I just remember, we were talking, I looked to the right of me, and I just remember seeing a bunch of armed guards, like GTA. They just came out, they just spawned out of nowhere, and I just remember hearing go, go, go. And so I started walking, and then I seen them, they started moving forward towards us, so I told Hannah, and so we all ran. And we kind of hid, I guess, in between the store, and Hannah was kind of shielding me, and all I heard was horses, and we started running, and then I looked back, and there was a horse, and an officer kind of snuck up on us and pulled Hannah. I just remember hearing Hannah, she was screaming, and then I got slammed down there in front of the horse, and then the horse stomped on my head.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my
It's
God.
not funny. And so I remember Hannah, she was screaming my name and she was like, no, and she was reaching for me. And as I was trying to grab her hand, I remember seeing someone push her away from me. Yeah.
They knew who he was all along?
No, it was in a different city than where she's from.
And I stood up, I finally got to get up, and I just remember someone from I got pushed the first time from the right side, and then someone from the left side dragged me right back down, and I remember I seen another horse, and I rolled over so fast, and I just went up to my hand, and I lost my phone, my AirPods, my keys, and my inhaler. And yeah.
So now a few specific questions for everyone, starting with you, Elise. We want to get into what are the connections between the movements against ICE and police brutality. We want to get specific because it's just a phrase we can use a lot, that these things are connected, it's all state violence, it's all the same system, but we think the specificity here would be helpful for people.
So it's two fucking heads of the same goddamn system. Like, both systems are designed to oppress people, but they're going after different groups of people. I mean, sometimes those two groups combine, but we see that in the tactics that they use. Both DHS and police forces will demonize their victims. Right, so we see that with DHS. We see them posting this most wanted shit on their Twitter. We see them saying, oh, we've got these violent criminals off the street. We know that's not what's fucking happening. We also know that the victims of police brutality are not what the media and what the state says about them. Right, people are reduced down to these narratives that are often false. We also see similar tactics in how people who fight against these institutions are treated. The repression and the repressive tactics are very, very similar. I think it wouldn't be hard for me, I think, with that story to see what happens and the way that people are targeted for speaking up against police brutality. And a similar thing is happening with DHS. I had my picture taken by DHS. It was posted on Twitter. My name was not attached to it, but they did call me a terrorist in that. And it's all done in a way to keep people afraid, to try to scare people, to keep people silent. And we have a responsibility to keep fucking fighting, because we're stronger if we keep fighting. We're stronger if we fight together. I think I'm done.
For you, David, just what you think there are in terms of lessons for people who are fighting ICE, trying to build a mass movement around stopping deportations, and for people fighting police brutality, what are things that people focusing on either one should be learning from each other?
So I want to start out by saying that we all agree that Black and immigrant sections of U.S. society have the most potential for rebellion, right? And because of that, it necessitates a crazy amount of brutality, surveillance, and incarceration from the state. They are actively working to crush our aspirations for a better world through these intimidation and violent tactics. They don't want us to think that there's any way out of this crooked system, but there is a way. There is a better world if we unite together and fight back. But the state, on top of the intimidation tactics and violence, they also try to prevent this unification by imposing for like distributing racist and individualistic ideology from the masses of people. And like this manifests in many different ways, but one of the most like disgusting, egregious ways that we've all seen is how like Latinos are recruited as ICE agents, or Black or Latino people are recruited as police officers. And then from what we see here is like from the most oppressed sections of society, they get a small leg up in the world just to punch down on their own people. And it's disgusting. So like, not only is this like divisive among the people, but it's also like very psychologically damaging for not only the racist ICE thug themselves, but like all the other people like viewing this. At the same time, like the easiest way out of a cycle of poverty that is perpetrated among so many people in this country is by signing up as an ICE agent and making that $60,000 sign-on bonus. It's by like signing up as a police officer, making over $100,000 a year, or by joining the military and getting the benefits and oppressing nations overseas. But like it is like this cycle of poverty and the hand that reaches down to the most oppressed people to like tap into that individualistic and racist mindset that affects so many people and pulls them up to become like a state thug. The same people that control the cycle of poverty are the same people that control the police. But at the end of the day, we can't let these racist and individualistic ideologies like divide and prevent us from uniting against the thugs that run this government. So yeah, fuck the police, fuck ICE, and we need a mass movement to take this all down.
Right.
And that's what we're here to build, right?
Right.
They're very, like, it's horrifying. It's horrible in there. It's much like the prison system, but what we found out is that these immigrants in the detention centers have a lot less access to the outside. Many people struggle to contact their families. I know two cases, one case in Texas, one case in Florida. Journalists had flown a drone overhead, and then the prisoners in the courtyard had linked up arms to create an SOS symbol for help because they haven't had access to the outside. And in another case, in I believe San Diego, prisoners, immigrant detainees, had tied up messages to like lotion bottles and threw it over the fence in the hope of someone would come across it and read it and maybe like send money to their commissioner. And another case, my final case I'll be talking about here. A friend of mine was followed for 55 miles by the local police down in Texas. And he was arrested and jailed for a couple weeks in county jail. During that time, he was strip searched multiple times and withheld their medication, transfers, and then transferred to an ICE detention center, which like the conditions did improve from the jail, honestly. But they were packed tight in this tight cell with 40 people, and all of them were fighting over $5 to contact their loved ones. And there was very strict restrictions on the time frame to do that as well. But I say all of this because yesterday they were released on bond. And thank you.
And then we'll do our last question. So now with young people around the country having played this leading role to fight ICE, leading walkouts from schools, leading protests to target immigrant facilities in their cities, Like, what is it about the issue with ICE that has been activating so many young people, and what can we do to like channel that energy to also be fighting police brutality?
I think young people started speaking up for us because it stopped our youth. Nowadays, young people can't go to the store like we could back then. We're scared to go to the parks, and not just because of ICE, but because of police too. There's been instances where, when the whole ICE thing was happening, some of my friends, or some of my friends' friends, they didn't want to go outside. Some weren't going to school. We're more targeted by ICE right now than we are by the police. You see more stories in the news about kids being targeted than you do with the police. You don't see a lot of teenagers being killed. And it's happening, but it's not more broadcasted as it is for teenagers. So it's kind of hard for us to ignore something that we see in our face every day. And just using our hurt and our anger and showing us that we can do something positive out of it. Because if we don't have ICE, we're going to lash out. We're going to go crazy because we have so much anger and so much hurt, and we want to get out and we want to be heard. And we want our voice to matter. We want what we're saying to make an impact. But it's more so giving us an alley to speak and giving us guidance and showing us how we can speak and showing us what we can do. Because a lot of people don't like speaking up, but a lot of people are social media savvy. So showing us that we all have different skills that we can use to make an impact.
All right, we're done. I was gonna say maybe we do a question or two, but it's 6:57. I think we can wrap for dinner. If I can get a thumbs up from the back, or if we should keep going.
Honestly, if people have questions, the dinner's not ready, so it's up to the crowd to make questions, or if you just switch your legs, that's
Okay, questions? Let's see what we hear.
Kids are next generation. Well deserved.